Welcome to this video tutorial on how to create PBR or physically based rendering materials in Rhino 8. Physically based rendering is essentially a way of mimicking real-world material or lighting qualities in computer graphics. Rhino 8 has a built-in physically based material editor that we can use to create realistic and detailed looking materials using maps and image-based textures to replicate these real-world effects. For this tutorial, I'm going to be downloading some textures from a website called PolyHaven. There are quite a lot of different websites you can use to find PBR materials, but this is a good one as it comes with a whole host of free materials that you can download. When you select a material in this website or on any of these websites, you'll notice that they come with a series of maps that you can download. We've got a kind of ambient occlusion map here, we've got the kind of color or diffuse map, we have a normal map which denotes the texture of the object, and all of these maps will essentially affect the way that light will interact with our geometry when we render out our scene, thus making it look realistic or detailed and mirroring real life. For this particular tutorial, I'm going to be using this brick wall texture and we're going to be applying it to our Rhino model here. To begin making PBR materials in Rhino, we're first going to open up our material editor. This can be done by typing in materials into the command line or by selecting the material tab in the render tools. Once we've opened this, we're going to make a brand new material just by clicking on the add material option in the top left hand corner. And here we're going to choose a physically based material. And we're just going to call this brick for the time being, like so. Now in the scene I'm going to be adding a texture to this foreground object, and I'm just going to change my viewport from shaded to rendered so we can start to see what this is going to look like when I add these materials in. You can see I've got a basic grass texture on the terrain at the moment and a simple shadow that's just giving us some light and shadow on our objects. Now to begin to add these textures in, we're first going to select our brick texture and we're going to go down to the detailed settings here. From this I'm going to click on the base color, and this is going to allow me to add in a new texture map into that base color slot here in order to give it that sort of brick-like texture. To add that material in, we just need to click on the folder option and we're just going to go to where our downloaded texture is located, and then we're going to add in the map from here. Now you'll notice when you download PBR materials, they'll come with a multitude of different maps, and each of these are going to control the way that the light reacts to your particular piece of geometry. Now I'm adding in the initial base color, so I need to look for the base color material. This is sometimes also called the diffuse map, and you can notice at the end of these textures we've got this little kind of word here. On this one it says diff, on this one it says disp. These all represent a different type of quality that you might add in to your texture. So diff actually means diffuse, and it also means the color of the object. So we're going to use this map here to add into that base color slot, and we're just going to select it and hit open, and there you can see it's loading in. Once you've opened it, you'll get this little dialog box that comes up which just tells us the size of the image and its file name. Once we've got that, we're just going to click on this back option here, and you can see that that texture is added in to the base color. Now to apply it to my wall, I'm just going to select these bits of geometry, right click on my texture and click assign to object, and there you can see my brick is now assigned. Now obviously at the moment the brick is wildly out of scale and it's always rotated also the wrong way around. This sometimes depends on the way you've modelled the object or the way the texture is placed, but if we want to resize that we need to accurately texture map it. To do that I'm just going to select my model like so, I'm going to go into the properties menu, click on texture mapping, and we're going to select the box mapping, which is usually the best way to texture map anything 3D. From here I'm just going to draw out a box. I'm not too worried at this stage the size of this because we can correct it later. It will give you a preview and then you hit enter to apply that mapping. Now if you think it's too big or too small, we can go back to this XYZ size here and actually start to tweak it. So usually if you're using a square texture you want all these numbers to be the same. So I'm going 5 by 5 by 5, maybe a little bit smaller for this, just until you get it to the right scale, and I think about that is roughly what I'm looking for. So once you're happy with that texture, we can then see it on our model. Now obviously in the rendered viewport this is just a preview of what this is looking like, and it looks a little bit faded. So in order to really see what this material is looking like, we need to go up to the render settings and hit this render preview option. This gives us a more accurate reading on how that material is looking. and here you can see it there. The colour's a little bit more vivid, but we still have this sort of shininess to it, and that's because we haven't actually changed the roughness of my material. It's really just set to the original roughness setting, which is giving it that shininess. So in order to take away that, we need to also add a map into that roughness panel. You'll notice that a lot of these slots we can add textures in will have corresponding maps in your downloaded material. And essentially the rule with PBR Materials is you just want to apply the map in to the correct slot in the material editor. So under roughness, I'm just going to scroll down, find this rough option, which essentially controls the roughness parameter. This is done on a grayscale, with a kind of white being really rough and a dark colour being very shiny. So the colour of that image will basically control the roughness of my object. And you can see there already it's taken off some of the shine. If I then load up the render preview again, you'll see that once this loads up, we've lost the shininess of that brick and it's looking a little bit more realistic now. So that's the roughness parameter. The next one I'm going to add in is the normal and bump map, and this is going to give us a bit more texture to this brick. We can find that under the detailed settings, under bump and normal displacement. And in here we're going to click the folder again, scroll down, find my purple normal map that is used to control the bumpiness or the normal of the object. And we're going to add that in, and you can see that it's already given the brick a little bit of kind of bumpiness and a bit of that surface texture. Again, with this, it usually comes in at a 30% controlled kind of intensity, but actually I like to up that all the way up to 100, especially if I've got things like this which are supposed to be particularly bumpy, and there you can see that texture is really popping through. Now if I go back to my render preview, you can then see that it's got a much nicer sort of texture coming through that as well. So that's also controlling that sort of bumpiness of the brick. As a last option here, I'm also going to add in an ambient occlusion, which is basically the sort of self-shadowing you get on these objects. To do that, we're going to go back into there and click on the AO material. And you can see here, this will just add the shadow to some of the crevices in the brick, and again make it a little bit more detailed. And there you can see that there. Then if I hit the render preview, again we can start to see that added in. So all of these features all control the kind of look and feel of this texture. And the more we add in and the more we kind of tweak those, the more refined it will be. Essentially every PBR material is controlled in the same way. You're going to be using maps to control the kind of roughness, the colour, the bump, the ambient occlusion, and all of these settings will then make the material look more and more realistic. Once you've got that, we can then apply that material to other layers. So I'm just going to apply it to my walls and bits in the background of these objects, like so. Now once you've done this, you can also match the mapping of these objects to your original object as well. If we go into the properties, go into texture mapping, we can click on this match mapping. I'm going to select this wall here, and it will just match all my other objects to that wall. And there you can see it's matched up there nicely. Then we'll do a final render just to see what this looks like. And there you can see I've now got this brick texture nicely mapped on the other surfaces of my wall. So that was just a quick video tutorial on how you create PBR materials in Rhino 8. I hope you found this video tutorial useful. This technique can be applied to any type of real-world material you're trying to create, and I've added a link in the description to different places you can download materials and other resources for use in Rhino. Thank you for watching the video, and if you want to watch any other videos on these kind of techniques, please do check out the videos on the channel.